All right, we're live here for the Panther-Lair Post-Game in the aftermath of a blowout. A blowout loss. I was trying to think back to the last time we'd say Pitt had a blowout loss. I mean, I guess Clemson in 2020, right? Clemson in the COVID year. They went down there with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. And, just got their doors absolutely blown off. And this was a different kind of blowout than that one. This wasn't, decided from the beginning. I mean, I guess if you were the type that believes in fate and predetermined outcomes, you would say, well, this, it ended up being a loss because, it ended up being a loss, so obviously it was always going to be a loss. And I understand that line of thinking. But, that Clemson game in 2020 was just an absolute destruction. This was a game where Pitt led into the fourth quarter, ever so shortly into the fourth quarter, but into the fourth quarter. Except the offense couldn't score in the fourth quarter, and the defense couldn't stop North Carolina in the fourth quarter. And when you have that, well, you got a pretty good recipe for a loss. And Carolina truly was unstoppable. In the second half, really. They came out in the second half. They punted on their first drive of the half. And then the next four, touchdown, 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 touchdown. And then an 8-play drive that gets 29 yards and takes 5.5 minutes off the clock. It was a blowout. Carolina controlling the second half. Pitt's second half drives, 1 touchdown, punt, fumble, punt, turnover on downs. No possession, no extended drives, no ability to move the ball, no ability to score. And that first drive of the second half looked great. They did some things that you really liked. You hit on play action and then ran the ball, and this is what's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to work. Except it didn't work, and it doesn't work, and it hasn't worked. And all season long, it hasn't worked. And all season long, I keep thinking, and people keep saying, and Pitt coaches and players keep saying, and I think there's some truth, or there at least it appeared there was some truth in the thought that, okay, you get the offensive line back healthy. You get enough of those guys back out there. You get Keaton Slovis settled back in after his hit at Tennessee. You get this guy back. You get that guy back. Once they get together, there's a lot of talent on this offense. And I think there is a lot of talent on this offense. And we could debate whether that talent is, whether there's enough talent at quarterback. There's a lot of talent on this offense. But this offense is broken. This offense is broken. And even when they were doing well in the first half, even when they were scored 17 points, which should have been more than that, they should have had at least 21. I think, we're not going to talk too much about penalties here because, you lose a game 42-24, you get your doors blown off by 3 scores. You don't really have a lot of room to talk about penalties. Oh, there should have been holding calls. Yeah, there should have been holding calls. Oh, that was a pass interference. Yeah, it was a pass interference. You got smoked by 18 points. So I'm not going to talk too much about penalties. But that drive, yeah, sure. If you get the pass interference call there, your offense is still doing well. You get the ball at like the 14, you got a real shot. You end up settling for a field goal. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because your offense is broken. And the defense ultimately, fell apart in this game. Couldn't do anything in the fourth quarter. I think those guys were probably a little tired. And the reality is, Drake May was always going to get hits. Drake May was always going to score points. Drake May was always going to go down the field. He's a really good quarterback. Pat Narduzzi wasn't just hyping him up to try and blow up the opponent when he said he's a first-round quarterback. He's right. That kid's really good. He's going to play another year, and he's probably going to win. He's going to be the ACC offensive. He's going to be the ACC Player of the Year this year. He's going to be the preseason favorite for that spot next year, and he'll probably win it. As long as he doesn't get hurt or something like that. He's great. He's a great player. He was going to score. He held him to 14 in the first half. Well, good for you. Or did he get? How much did they have in the first half? Yeah, 14 in the first half, 21 through 3 quarters. That's quite an accomplishment. But you weren't going to keep it there all game. At some point, he was going to start breaking through in 34-44 for 388 and 5 touchdowns. Come on. Completed passes to how many guys? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys. 10 different guys. He was great. And you knew he was going to break through. That's why you had to score. Now, fortunately, you were playing against the worst defense in the ACC. Say it with me, because we said it a billion times over the last week that this is the worst defense in the ACC. This is a defense that gave up an average of 32 points per game this season. And you scored 24. You can't even get 400 yards against the worst defense in the ACC. A defense that was giving up like 200 rushing yards per game. And Pitt, if there's anything they can do or anything they should be able to do or anything they're supposed to be able to do is run the ball, Pitt gets 131 yards on the ground. Izzy Benicana goes 26 for 127 and 3 touchdowns. That's nice. He had a good game. He continues to have good games. He's really good. He's over 1,000 yards. That's great. But you only get 130 rushing yards as a team against a team that had Duke go for 300 against them on the ground? I'm sorry. It's fundamental. There's something broken about this offense. There's something broken about this offense when this is the product. This is what they come up with against the worst defense in the ACC. 367 yards, 24 points, 3 touchdowns. There's something broken about the offense. Okay, because you did face the defense by the numbers that has been the worst in the conference. And guess what happens if you play the worst defense in the conference and you can't even get 400 yards and more than 24 points? Guess what that makes you? The worst offense in the conference. And I don't know if the numbers reflect that. I don't know if the numbers will end up reflecting that after this weekend. I don't know. But I mean, you can't realistically expect much out of this offense at this point. They played 4 conference games. They're 1-3. They scored less than 30 in 3 out of the 4. They scored, less than 20 in one of those games. If you can't get to 30 or more in conference games in the ACC, you're not going to win. And Pitt can't get to 30 or more, and they're not winning. They put up 45 on on Virginia Tech. I guess Virginia Tech, maybe they have a worse offense. Virginia's offense is a mess right now too. So maybe Pitt's not the worst offense in the ACC because at least they have a standout player who's going to be, he's going to be a first team all conference player at running back. So maybe they're not the worst offense in the ACC, but they're pretty far down. And any thoughts or any hopes or any possibilities of this team accomplishing anything? I mean, they went out the door 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago against Georgia Tech, where they took a bus out of town tonight. We got the Clayton James tonight because it's that kind of night. And we got to try and figure out something here. We got to figure out some answers. We got to figure out why this team has played as poorly as it has in conference play and really all season. Because the offense, it just seems to be broken. And I can't really explain it. And they hit some things tonight. Use play action to go downfield. Jared Wayne ends up with, what did he finish with? 161 yards on 7 catches. He has a 50-yard catch, a 40-yard catch. A 50, a 41, a 29, and a 21. Bub Means goes for 40. It goes for 40 receiving yards. And, ends up with, a season high for a single game total for Bub Means. But the problem is, so much of any success that they were able to find this season, or in this game, excuse me, came on those chunk plays. Now look, when you hit big plays, I mean, you're going to build up a big percentage of your offensive yards out of those big plays. There's no question about it, right? I mean, when you hit big, I don't like it when people say, well, take away this play or take away that play. But if you look at these, handful of big plays, let's take about 5 passes. Bub Means has a 40-yard pass. Jared Wayne catches 41, 21, 29, and 50. That's 181 out of Keaton Slovis's 236 yards. He goes 14 of 31 for 236 and gets 181 of his 236 yards on those 5 passes. So the other 26 passes only produced about 50 yards. There's something broken about that. There's something wrong about that. And there were times where I thought in this game, all right, they're kind of getting it. They're figuring it out. First drive of the game, beautiful. Beautiful. Bub Means for 6. What is it? A screen pass attempt to Vincent Davis that he drops. Third down, they go to Bub Means downfield for 40 yards. Great play. Next first down, Jared Wayne for 8. Next, second down, Izzy Benicana runs for 10. Incomplete pass thrown out of the end zone, just a throwaway by Keaton Slovis. They go to the Wildcat for 7 yards, and then on 3rd and 3 from the 6, Izzy Benicana runs in. It's a great drive. Second drive, not so hot. Third drive, they had some chances. Keaton Slovis threw a few nice deeper passes to Jared Wayne. One was deflected a little bit, but it was still a nice throw and a good read, a good play. And then the other one was dropped on a play action shot that they tried to take that they ended up connecting on later. They got 41 yards on the next drive on a play action shot to Slovis, or from Slovis to Wayne. And then Abanikanda runs in for the touchdown from 4 yards out. There were points where it looked like maybe they had something they could work off of, but they never really filled in that sort of intermediate area, that middle range of passes that we've talked so much about in the past few weeks. And, I even said before they start hitting those deep shots, they need to get something working in sort of the intermediate range, the shorter passes, the 6 to 8, the 10-yard passes, just to try to build some momentum in the offense. And once again, this offense never really seemed to have momentum, never seemed to get in a rhythm, never really seemed to flow, because it was either handoffs or play action deep shots. And then once North Carolina adjusted to defending that post pattern to Jared Wayne, those stopped being there as well. And the broken offense could never really sort itself out. And it it just feels like it's kind of like, I keep coming back to that word broken, but sort of top to bottom, that's kind of how it feels. And now you have a team that's sitting at 4-4. They didn't lose 4 games all last season, and they've lost 4 of their first 8 here. And that's pretty it's a major disappointment. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think everyone's more than everyone's very quick to use that word, and rightfully so, about how much of a disappointment this season has been. I think it's a disappointment to Pitt. I think it's a disappointment to the players and the coaches at Pitt, to have fallen this far. And you can go back and you can say, well, Tennessee just, darn it, they just missed a couple field goals in a game that they end up going to overtime. They were that close. And you can say, Louisville, man, darn it, just that first half, you got 3 drives that end in just unforced errors, turnovers, just bad mistakes. Darn it, man, you had a shot. That's a couple wins right there. And Georgia Tech, man, you just needed 1 drive, and you could have. Oh man, we should be undefeated. Well, we should be 6-1, and I was on board with that line of thinking. I said it myself that this Pitt team should be 6-1 with the way they had played. They very realistically should have been 6-1 through the first 7 games. But when you then come into this game, and there's no excuses for this game, and there's no yeah but, or oh man, if you just this or that in this game, those things don't exist. Those caveats don't exist for this game, this 18-point blowout. Okay, this was just. You just straight up lost. You needed to give yourself more of a cushion on offense. You needed to score more points so that when Drake May eventually started really getting rolling, because Pitt was playing well against him, Pitt was getting to him, they were hitting him, and even though he was completing a high percentage of his passes, they were making plays on him. And even when he ran and converted the 4th down, Shavasi Dennis took a rough angle on that one. But even when he ran and converted the 4th down, you saw that, well, he's a great player. He's a great player, and he's going to make plays. You played Trevor Lawrence. You played Drake May. You played some of the great quarterbacks in the ACC. I mean, I don't think Sam Hartman is in that category. Sam Howell, to some extent, was in the last couple years. But you play these guys, and even if you get them early, even if you're getting to them, you're getting pressure on them, you're forcing them into maybe even making some mistakes, you're hitting them, you're knocking them around, you send him out of the game because he cuts his hand and all this stuff. You know that eventually they're going to get something going. I think the ACC championship game last season with Sam Hartman was the exception. Although Louisville looked like they did something similar to him in this game today. In terms of knocking him around and really getting him kind of thrown off his game and seeing ghosts, hearing footsteps, and all those kind of cliches. But for the most part, I mean, these really good quarterbacks, they're going to find a way, and eventually they're going to break through. And that's coming. You can't imagine you're going to hold them to just, one touchdown a quarter, which still would have been too much for this game. It would have been a great defensive performance if you held this UNC team with Drake May to one touchdown every quarter, which is the pace they were on through the first three, right? And they came out of the first three quarters with a 24-21 lead. But you needed more of a cushion than that, because even if you give up 28, 24 is not enough. You needed to create more of a cushion. You needed to not make every drive feel like a killer for the defense when, if they happen to give up a touchdown. They ultimately ended up giving up 3, and I think those guys got worn down. I think they got outplayed by really talented players, and they had no margin for error. And we talked about this early in the season, that when the offense is struggling like this, there's no room for error for the defense and for the special teams. You got to be really good. And this team, the defense has its slip-ups. The special teams have plenty of slip-ups. We saw a number of them tonight. But the offense just allows them no room for that. The way the offense plays, the offense's inability to score, it puts so much pressure on the defense. I'm not saying that's why they ended up giving up 3 fourth quarter touchdowns. They give up 3 fourth quarter touchdowns because I think they got worn down a little bit, and because Drake May and Josh Downs and Antoine Green, these guys are really, really good players. And they showed it. And if you're going to beat really good players, I mean, in college football, you assume that those offenses full of studs, that they're going to score eventually. And if you can't create, a cushion so that when they score, you're still able to stay ahead, that even if they score 28 or 31 or 35, you can keep yourself ahead of it with 38 or 42 points of your own. I mean, then you need to play. You only have a chance against bad offenses, in that scenario. And even that hasn't held up for Pitt because they lost to Louisville and they lost to Georgia Tech. And I was thinking before I started the show, and I'm going to get to the comments here in a second, because I mean, I don't really know what else there is to say from me. I was thinking when I started the show, I was like, I gotta talk about the defense, just kind of laying down in the fourth quarter. But that's not the story. It's just not the story. The story is what the story has been for 8 games now. The story is what it was for the first 7 games and what it's now been for 8 games and what it's going to be for the next 4 games. Because this isn't a small sample size anymore. Keaton Slovis has been back for a while. They've had some offensive line guys back for a while. And it's still not clicking. It's still not working. 24 points and 367 yards are the best you can do against the, supposedly or presumably the worst defense in the ACC. I mean, looking at what other teams have done against Carolina, App State scored 61, Notre Dame scored 45, Duke scored 35, Georgia State scored 28. All those teams scored more against North Carolina than Pitt did. Florida A&M and Miami both scored 24. I guess Miami did Tyler Van Dyke play in that game? Because Miami's offense is not exactly a shining example of anything good right now. Virginia Tech scored 10. But again, is that the category you want to be in? You want to be in a comparison with Miami's offense with the way they're playing. You want to be in a comparison or in a group with Virginia Tech. You're like, well, at least they scored more than Virginia Tech did. I mean, this is a defense that has some talented players, but they've given up a lot this season. And I thought Pitt would be able to take advantage, and they put up, one of their worst rushing performances in quite some time, and just one of their worst overall performances on offense as a whole. All right, I want to get into the comments and questions, see what you guys are talking about, see what's going on in the chat screen. Let's see. Sean Conley says, let's get 2 more wins and be bowl eligible and reload for next season. Syracuse and Miami are both winnable games with the quarterback we have. Interesting. I usually kind of push back against instant reactions right after the game where we say this team is never going to do this or going to struggle to do that and that kind of thing. I try to avoid that. I don't like to come out of a loss and say this team's never going to win another game. But the reality is, with 8 games of evidence now, we've seen what this offense maybe is capable of. And we've seen that this offense struggles and that this offense is, like I say, broken and just unable to put it together, no matter what kind of personnel they're able to get out there. And so it's hard for me to look ahead and look, Syracuse, if Garrett Trader's out for a while, they take a big step back for sure. Those games between Pitt and Syracuse are always close. Pitt and Syracuse always play each other tight. That should be a game they should be able to win. But I can't look at the final 4 games at all right now and say, boy, I would expect Pitt to win that game. I don't think they're going to lose out. I don't think they're going to go 4-8. I think they're going to get bowl eligible. But God, the offense has just been so bad. And so I shouldn't even say so bad because I think that paints with such a broad brush and doesn't get into the sort of why and how of it. The offense has just struggled. It's been so inconsistent and so unable to string together any kind of, consistent effectiveness, that it's hard to look at any one of these individual games. Virginia, they should win. You know what I mean? They should, but they're kind of struggling the way that Pitt is struggling right now. Duke seems to be on the rise. They're playing better than they have in recent years. Not worse the way that Pitt has. Syracuse has had a pretty strong season up until this point. This Notre Dame butt kicking that they took today was a step back for sure. Miami is struggling without their quarterback. I don't know what the outlook there is on Tyler Van Dyke, if he'll be back anytime soon or not. But I can't look at any of those 4 games right now and say Pitt's going to win that one. I think they'll get a couple wins out of that stretch. I don't think they're going to lose out. But you're at a point now at 4-4 where even that supposed floor for the program that we've talked about in the past of, they got to be at least 8-4 every year. That's where the floor should be. And at one point this season, I said, if they only go 8-4 this year, that's going to be a major disappointment. Well, right now, that's the best case scenario, is a major disappointment. All right, we got super chatters who came in here. We got to start with those guys. Michael B is a super chatter. He says, "Hi, Chris. I'm really bummed. I'm super pissed at Narduzzi. I'm sorry, but this man is not a good coach. He has ruined this season, and he has the gall to claim Slovis played great. Program is in a free fall. Horrible extension." Well, they're having a bad year. There's no question about that. I guess, it doesn't erase the success they had last year or what they accomplished last year, but they're certainly having a bad year right now. There's no question about that. Narduzzi's comments about Slovis, I'm guessing you're what he said at halftime. I haven't seen his post-game quotes yet. I don't know if Jim Hammett was down there for us. I don't know if he put anything from Narduzzi's post-game on Panther-Lair.com yet, but I thought Slovis played fine in the first half. He was hitting some bigger passes. He was hitting some downfield stuff. Let me look at first half. He was 8 of 18 for 157. Which 8 of 18, not the completion percentage you want, but I think he had at least 2 or 3 drops and two pretty good throwaways that I can think of. So now you're looking at if you adjust for the throwaways and the drops, I mean, you're looking at maybe 8 of 13, 8 of 14, which is better. For 157, I mean, that's pretty good. That's on track that's right on track with where Drake May was. Drake May had 159 yards. And so I thought he played well in the first half. I did. I thought Keaton Slovis, hitting those deeper passes played well in the first half. It's just that stuff wasn't always sustainable for this offense and for these players, and they couldn't do it in the second half. Let's see here. More super chatters rolling in. Biz says it's time to accept that Slovis needs to talk to a medic and be benched. And then he says, I haven't donated since the ACC championship, been bitter. I don't know what you do with Keaton Slovis. I think, so what it'll always come down to with the personnel decisions, all right? What it'll always come down to is the coaches have to look at it and say, all right, why is this guy struggling? Is this guy struggling because he's not getting the stuff that we're coaching him to do? Actually, no. I mean, that's not a question because obviously he's not. He's not getting the coaching. The coaching isn't taking with him. And so Pat Narduzzi needs to sit back and look at it and say, all right, is this something we're not going to be able to fix with him? Or is there something in the way that we're approaching it? Are we not coaching it right? Are we not drawing up the offense right? Are we not designing the plays? Are we not using the right kind of terminology? Are we making it too complex in unnecessary ways? And that might apply to the whole offense and not just Keaton Slovis. Narduzzi has to ask himself those questions. Pat Narduzzi has to ask himself, where is the flaw in Keaton Slovis? Why is this not clicking? Why is it that we can hit 5 passes, 5 pretty decent plays off, mostly off of play action, where we're finally doing that thing where we go downfield on play action because teams know that we're going to try and run the ball a lot. Why is it that he wasn't able to do anything outside of that? Why is it that in the second half he went into a shell? What did I say he was? 8 of 18 for 157 in the first half. In the second half, he was 6 of 13 for 79 yards. Why did that happen? What happened there? Was it failures on Slovis's part? And if they were, are those inherent flaws that he's not going to be able to overcome? Or are those things that there's an issue with the coaching? And Pat Narduzzi has to ask himself that. And if it's inherent flaws, things he's not going to be able to overcome, then he needs to look at making a change on the bench. Or making a change on the field. And bringing in Nick Patty. Or even if he really wants to go to Nate Yarnell or something. I think that's going to be the decision. And if he feels like there's an issue with the coaching, then he needs to sit down with Frank Cignetti and say, you need to communicate this better. You need to make this offense work for these guys. If Pat Narduzzi genuinely feels like Keaton Slovis is a talented quarterback who can play better than he has, then he needs to sit down with Frank Cignetti and maybe with Slovis in the room and say, guys, how are we going to figure this out? Tell me how we're going to fix this, because whatever we're doing out there is not working. It's broken. How are we going to fix this broken offense? And it should have been done 2 weeks ago during the bye, during the off week. How are we going to fix this broken offense? And he needs to find answers. You know what I mean? He needs to find answers, because the answers to those questions are going to decide whether he sticks with Keaton Slovis or he, makes a change and goes with Nick Patty. Let's see here. John Waffle H2P says Cignetti needs to go now. That's not going to happen. Just like the Steelers aren't going to fire Matt Canada in the middle of the season, Pitt's not going to fire any an offensive coordinator in the middle of the season. It's not going to happen. Biz says, as someone with multiple concussions, Slovis needs to talk to a doctor and they need to let Yarnell start. Here's the thing. Guess what, guys? If Keaton Slovis had to come out of a game, Nick Patty would be the guy. Okay? Nick Patty would be the quarterback who goes in. That's just the reality. Now, I don't know if that changes your opinion or not, but that's the reality. Bill Florigen says, I usually have a few beers when I watch the game. I watched this one stone cold sober. I came to the same conclusion, drunk and sober. Fire Cignetti. Biz says it's time to let Yarnell run the offense. Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by Nate Yarnell. I'm really intrigued by what we saw in the Western Michigan game. I thought he looked very interesting. You know what I mean? I like his potential for the future. Right now, Pitt needs to find the best guy who's going to help them win these last 4 games. And, there may not be much difference to you of a 6-6 versus 7-5 versus 8-4 season. But I think they still need to push pretty hard to get those wins this season. And not just try to put in the youngest quarterback to get a play for the future. Biz, as a super chatter, he says, we were lied to about what this team was. See, no, I don't think so. I really don't. And this is something I thought about a lot last week. After the Louisville game, and I wrote about it and talked about it a lot. The players are talented. I genuinely believe there are talented players on this offense. I think Jared Wayne's a good player. I think Kanate Mumfield is a good player who's been criminally underused. I think Gavin Bartholomew is a good player who's been criminally underused. And to be honest, I don't. You should be getting the ball to El Barto just because he's a valuable weapon in the offense. He's someone who can make things happen for your offense. But you know what? It's 2022. And if you have a talented player who has some level of accomplishment in his history and he's being underutilized right now, and he's only a sophomore, so he's got a bunch of years of eligibility left, and I say this as sort of a general statement, not specific to El Barto at all, but as a general statement, if you have a talented young player who should be a fixture of your team, either on offense or defense, and he's being underutilized, he's not getting the opportunities that a player of his talent deserves, and he's got years of eligibility left, you should get him the ball, not just because it helps your team win right now, which is obviously the most important reason, but because you want him to be on the team next year. And I say that without any, I don't know what Gavin Bartholomew's thinking. I don't know, I'm not. This isn't some wink, insinuation or sources or something like that. I'm just saying it's 2022, and if you have a guy who was a freshman All-American last year, and this year is not getting the ball, he did a couple passes thrown to him tonight, and they weren't real passes. They weren't real opportunities to actually make plays. This is a guy who made SportsCenter. Probably. I haven't watched SportsCenter in a long time, but I presume he made SportsCenter for jumping over a Tennessee defender, right? What do you think is going to happen if you keep not getting him the ball? For one thing, your offense isn't going to get any better because you need to get him the ball to help you win games. But another, I think you absolutely run the risk of a guy looking around. And that's with no knowledge whatsoever of Gavin Bartholomew's mindset. I don't know. He might be sitting right next to me and say, what are you, a moron? I'm not going anywhere. I don't care if I get 1 pass or 100 passes. I'm not leaving. And I'd say, okay. But I'd say in 2022, you need to be thinking about that a little bit. But more to the point, you need to get the ball to El Barto because it helps you win games. He's one of your best offensive players. And to be as underutilized as he was tonight, to have only 3 players catch a pass in this game, and they threw, those weren't the only guys that were targeted. Miles Alston had a pass thrown to him. Izzy Abanikanda had a couple passes thrown to him. El Barto had a couple passes thrown to him. But you only completed and Vincent Davis had the screen pass. But to only complete passes to 3 receivers? No. The talent is better than that. These players are better than that. These players are better than 24 points and 367 yards against North Carolina. No. It's a disappointing turn. Biz says, one last side comment. SEC games are awesome. The ACC could learn from how great the environment is. Love the podcast. Appreciate it. Love, I appreciate you guys all tuning into it. I don't know about environment, and you know why the SEC has great environments at its games? It's because the fans are crazy passionate and super, behind their teams. Fans at Ole Miss, fans at Texas A&M, fans at Georgia, fans at Tennessee, they live and die with their teams. And in the ACC, you've got Clemson, and you've got Florida State, and most of the time Virginia Tech. But other than that, what fan base really lives and dies with its football team in the ACC? You know what I mean? Miami can't draw to save their lives. Pitt has its attendance that we know. Syracuse, I mean, come on. You know, Boston College, Virginia, you know, Carolina and Duke. I mean, these are basketball schools. They pay marginal attention when the football programs are really good. Wake Forest, I mean, I don't know what Wake's attendance numbers were late last season or early this season. Maybe they were good. But, I mean, are people really paying that much attention? You know, Florida State, Clemson, they'll draw. Georgia Tech, I've been to games at Georgia Tech. Been to games at Georgia Tech when they were actually halfway decent. And nobody goes. It's just, you know, I think that's, the support is just not there like it is in the SEC. I mean, people live and die with those SEC programs, and like probably more than half the conference, if not 3/4. And it'll, you know, the percentage will only grow when Texas and Oklahoma come in, because those are two more fan bases where people go crazy for the teams. All right, let's see here. I want to roll through a lot of comments. A lot of people have been posting in the chat screen. We appreciate that. Tried to get through all the super chats. If I missed yours, I'll try and get to it here. Benjamin Glazer says, during the halftime interview, Pat Narduzzi said Keaton Slovis has been excellent. Who is he talking about? I think Slovis was fine in the first half. I mean, he wasn't great. You know, Narduzzi might be overselling it with, you know, by saying excellent, but I think he was pretty good in the first half. You know, second half he fell apart. David Allen says, the team cannot design medium pass plays to open receivers. Carolina did it all night. More and more evidence that the offensive coordinator is the issue. Like, I've been beating the drum for those short, medium, you know, mid-range passes all season. I came out of the bye week saying this is what they need to do. They need to go to Louisville and just hammer like 8-yard passes, 9-yard passes, 7-yard passes. Do those things. Offset them with the running game and occasionally take shots off of play action. That it just hasn't come to fruition. And I mean, you're absolutely right. We saw Carolina attack it all night long. You know, over and over and over those short passes toward the sideline. You know, how often did they do it? And they were quick passes designed to offset the, you know, Pitt's pass rush, which is smart, but it also worked really well. You know what I mean? They were able to connect on those passes, and sure, a lot of them only got, you know, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of them might only get 3 yards or 2 yards, maybe 4. But then there were others that got 7 yards and 8 yards, and some got a first down. Attacking the sideline, attacking the mid-range passes, attacking the medium-distance passes. And this offense doesn't do it. This offense doesn't have it, even though they have a guy named Gavin Bartholomew who's perfect for that role. Jared Wayne is perfect for that role. The running backs can catch out of the backfield. I mean, Konate Mumfield, you know, the diving catch is one of the best flashes outside of the Western Michigan game that we've had of what he can do. He's a talented player. He's a really good wide receiver. And in this game, what did he have? Hold on, let me bring the box score back up. 4 catches for 22 yards? This is a freshman All-American. This is a guy who was an All-American in Akron, had 3 100-yard receiving games, and you go 4 for 22 against the worst defense in the ACC? It's broken. It's broken. And there are a lot of guys that you can put it on, but something's not working. David Allen also says, hope the Pitt can get to a bowl. More importantly, that the head coach makes needed changes to the staff and philosophy. If he doesn't, things can get ugly in upcoming years. I think there will be staff changes after the season. I think this season is falling far enough below what Pat Narduzzi expected this season to be, that there will be staff changes after this season. I mean, there's staff changes every year. I don't think they've had a single year where they've gone, you know, maintain the entire staff from one year to the next. But I think this year there'll be changes. Will says, this offense showed some nice things in the first half, but they are just utterly incapable of making adjustments and protecting the ball. The defense got lit up, but May is the real deal. I'm tired of the tight offensive formations. Our offensive line look like they're Siamese quintuplets out there. Well, it's tough with the offensive formations. I mean, they went 3 receivers quite a bit. I don't know. You know, watching on TV, I can't say I don't know if Jalen Barden played or not. He was supposed to be a starter. He was going to start. And they ended up starting with Jared Wayne, Konate Mumfield, and Bub Means. So I don't know if I don't know what happened there. What was I? The offensive formation. So I mean, they spread it out a little bit. I think they were trying to sell the play action a lot, and they were able to get play action working, and they got some plays out of it. They used Ryan Jacoby quite a bit. They used 3 tight ends, whatever you want to call it, 31 personnel, I guess, with Gavin Bartholomew and Carter Johnson and Ryan Jacoby, plus a receiver and a running back, and they were able to hit some plays out of that. Let me see if it was 21. I thought there were a couple of the deep passes. Yeah, the 41-yard pass, I think, was with 3 tight ends on the field. 50-yard pass. Let me see what I wrote down for that one. That was 11 personnel. So that was one that the 50-yard pass. I mean, at least I wrote it down as 11 personnel. They might have had 2 running backs with 1 split out wide. They did a lot with Vincent Davis in this game, but it was still under center. I just like I liked some of the things that they were trying to do. I liked how they mixed and matched under center and shotgun stuff. I think they had Keaton Slovis back in the shotgun quite a bit. You don't want to get to a point where you're just totally tipping your hand that if you're in the shotgun, it's a pass, and if you're under center, it's a run or play action run, or play action pass, I should say. But at the same time, I mean, Slovis seems to pass better, for the most part, out of shotgun, although today's biggest plays seem to come from under center. I don't know. They need more receivers. I mean, Jaden Bradley transfers. They have some injuries there, and so that gets tricky with what they're able to do. But I don't know. The offensive formations, sometimes it feels like there's nothing that works. Sean Conley says, Keaton Slovis just isn't good enough to be a difference maker. He underthrew Jared Wayne 3 times in the first half. He hits those for touchdowns. The game is over early on. Yeah, and Will agreed with him, said those bombs did not hit in stride, and several other passes were thrown behind the receiver. Yeah, it's not good. Travis Spagnolo says, it seems like this team never recovered from the Tennessee loss. That game and the week before against West Virginia just seemed to make Pitt pay a huge price physically. Not saying that's why they are 4-4, though. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think... I would think they came out of the Tennessee loss feeling better about themselves. Not that you feel good with a loss, but feeling like, we played really tough against this team that looks really good, and we should be able to win some games. And they probably did feel that way. I think they felt confident going into Western Michigan, obviously confident against Rhode Island, but the Georgia Tech game should have been the wake up call, the come back to earth moment. But it wasn't. Let's see here. Other comments. Travis Spagnolo asked a question I've wondered about a lot myself. He says, I wonder what this team looks like today if they just kneel at the end of the first half against Tennessee. Slovis looked fine then. The offense was moving. One play quite possibly changed their season. Yeah. I mean, I've wondered about that a lot myself. I've wondered what it would be. If Keaton Slovis doesn't get hit there, he keeps playing. He's able to keep building up momentum and building. What's the word, like consistency with his receivers and building a rapport with his receivers in the games, and he's able to keep playing the next few games, and who knows. But I think there's something more broken about this offense than that. Let's see. Brendan Hominick says, there goes my preseason bet of Pitt over 8.5 wins. Yeah, that's not that's not going to happen. unless you got to include the regular season or the postseason. If that was just regular season, then you've lost that one. And Travis Spagnuolo replied, "It's amazing that Vegas always knows so much more than us. I believe the official number in the summer was 7.5. I thought those guys, I would have thought that was easy money, but those guys always seem to know. At the same time, Carolina was -3 for this game. Carolina was, favored only by 3. I think it might have opened at 2.5. Maybe it bumped up a little bit after that. And so it's kind of funny that, Vegas does seem to know, but it would seem they undersold this, because I'm sure when it came out at -3, people hammered North Carolina because that looked like the obvious win. See here. AH says maybe not outright bad, but still a mess. I mean, I think they're close enough to be bad. I think we can say bad at times. Adam Ballish says this team's best win this year is Virginia Tech. Yikes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's Virginia Tech or West Virginia. Which one do you pick as the best win? It's one of those two. And either way, you don't feel great about that. Let's see. Josh Newark says, how many times were guys pointing each other and blaming each other for missed assignments? Yeah, that tends to happen in losses. I feel like, we've seen that a number of times over the years, and particularly with this defense where a lot of guys end up in one-on-one situations, either in coverage or, tackle assignments and things like that. We've seen a lot of, not necessarily finger pointing, but a little bit of like, why weren't you there? Why weren't you doing this? Or why weren't you doing that? And I think frustration builds when you start getting, kind of your tail kicked the way they did in the fourth quarter here tonight. Frustration builds and you do end up pointing some fingers, I would say. Rusty Shackelford says, millions of dollars invested in this staff, no consequences, just more embarrassment. Well, I don't know what when you say no consequences, again, nobody's going to get fired in the middle of the season. I don't think that really helps all that much. Personally, I think you make moves after the season. I think you stick with the consistency through the season, and then you reassess at the end of the year and decide what direction you want to go in. I think the consequences come at the end of the season. BMX says you can't go forward with this quarterback and hopefully not the O coordinator as well. Quarterback, I don't know what you do at that point. At this point, I should say. I mean, it's just it's clearly not working, and I can make a case that the Louisville game, he made 2 really bad mistakes, but he played generally well otherwise, at least in the first half. I mean, here, and again, this game, he didn't play all that great, but he hit a few of those deeper shots, but you're looking at a sample size that spans the season, and you say, what are you really getting here? And I think you have to make a decision. And again, I think if Pat Narduzzi sticks with Keaton Slovis, then I think he's saying that he believes in Slovis's talent and that the issue has been coaching. Because it's either coaching or player. It's either the coach or the player. It's either coaching or talent. And it's not 100% one or 100% the other. It's some of both. But you got to decide which one is having the greater impact. And if you believe it's the talent, if you believe it's the player that's having the bigger negative impact, then you change players. If you believe it's the coaching, then you stick with the players you've got and try to adjust the coaching. And so Keaton Slovis is the starter again next week, and I'm guessing he will be. Then I think we have to assume that Pat Narduzzi's putting that on coaching. Josh Newark's question is same thing. Is coaching failing or is it player execution? Is this the worst 4 phases of special teams Pitt has ever had? I don't know what you're talking about with worst 4 phases of special teams. Pitt was down to its 3rd punter and he boomed one. I would have kept Caleb Junko in there. God, he crushed that kick. It was awesome. Put it inside the 20. Is it coaching failing or is it player execution? That, to some extent, that's an impossible question to answer because we don't know what the play calls are. We don't know what everybody was supposed to do. We don't know what everybody did. We don't know what they saw, what they read, what their decisions were. We don't know any of that, and so it's hard to say. But when you look at game 1 to game 8 and it doesn't feel like this offense is disjointed. I mean, you could go back and look at, we do the morning Pitt video, right? We do the morning Pitt video every day, Monday through Friday, every morning. We've been doing it since August or something like that. And I think it was after the Tennessee game. There's a morning Pitt video saying, what is Pitt's offensive identity? We didn't know then, and we don't know now. We don't know what this offense is. And to me, I think if you get to this point in the season and your offensive identity, I mean, aside from just, they can run the ball really well, but if you have no developed passing game and you have no identity in how you pass and how you throw the ball, then I think that is on coaching. I think that is a failure of coaching. All right. A couple of super chatters came in here. Let's get down to you guys. Scroll down. John Smith says, give us a reason to believe this program is still on the right trajectory and last year wasn't an anomaly. Give you a reason to believe. Okay. Was last year an anomaly? Let's answer that question. Let's ask that question. Let's answer that question. They had a generational quarterback, right? Everybody acknowledges that. Everybody understands that. But he was a guy who took 4 years to develop, right? He wasn't a generational quarterback in 2020. He wasn't a generational quarterback in 2019. He wasn't a generational quarterback in 2018. It took 4 years to develop. And granted, the coach who developed him is no longer here. But I guess my point is that, it wasn't just sort of a one-off. It was a guy who came up in the program and grew and developed in the program into the player that he became. I do think the recruiting's been good. Great in some spots, not as great or not great enough in other spots. I think it's been good enough to compete in and win the Coastal Division. I do think there is value in stability, and I know that gets thrown around, that gets laughed about, that gets joked about. A lot of good stability is doing us now, and I understand that, and I can understand why. But I think the further we get away from 2011, in 2012, and even 2014, the further we get away from those years, the more we forget what that instability felt like and the impact that it had on the program. And so, I know we laugh about stability when you just got your butt kicked by 18 points against a conference opponent. But the reality is it's better to have it than not. And I think there is a solid foundation in the program. I think there are obvious changes that Pat Narduzzi has to make. I think there are things he's got to do to improve the program right now. But on the whole, I think he's got the program in a good spot, in a healthy spot, in a strong position, and generally moving forward, even if this season feels like a step back. Let's see. Michael B. says, Chris, the reason Narduzzi is sticking with Slovis is because he arranged a nice NIL package for him and got him to come to Pitt. Let's be real here. I don't think Pat Narduzzi... I think Pat Narduzzi has stuck with Keaton Slovis to this point because he feels like he's the best quarterback on the team. He's said as much. I don't think, he would stick with him just because he promised him he was going to be the starter. I don't think he would stick with him just because of an NIL deal or something. I don't even know what NIL deal he's gotten. Have we seen many ads or promotions with Keaton Slovis? I'm sure he got something. But I don't know if that would necessarily make Narduzzi beholden to anything, in that sense. I think if there was another quarterback that gave him a better chance to succeed, they would make a change. But I don't think he feels like, or at least hasn't felt like, that was the case. Walat Harris says, is it too late to fry eggs in my kitchen? No, it's not. I might do it when we're done here anyway. We're done in a few minutes anyway. I might go up and cook some eggs too. Or I'll just keep drinking. It's always a good option. Let's see what else we got. Other, what should we call it? Other chat comments here. I mean, you guys are, everybody's mad. There's no question about it. Everybody's disappointed about this game, and rightfully so. I mean, it's one of these games. You don't look back at it necessarily and say, boy, this is one that you wish you could have back. You know, you don't look back and say, boy, this is one they had there and they just couldn't hang on. They just blew it. I mean, you end up losing by 18 points. I mean, you did a lot of things wrong to lose a game like that. And there's definitely, you know, the defense gave up 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. And that's, you can't do that and win a lot of games. You know, you give up 21 points in the fourth quarter, you're going to lose, most of those games unless you're so far ahead you can absorb that. But the reality is, as we said from the start, as we've been saying for a while, there's just a flaw in the offense. There's a fundamental flaw in the offense. There's something fundamentally broken in this offense. And I think that stretches to a number of places, both on the field and off the field. But to this point, they have not been able to fix it. And from the start, you know, they didn't know what I don't think they had a clear idea of what they wanted the offense to be. I mean, you look at the West Virginia game where Keaton Slovis is under center for almost the entire first half, and then in the shotgun for almost the entire first half, or the entire second half, where he's, you know, somewhat in the shotgun in the first half of the Tennessee game, kind of looks like the second half of the West Virginia game. Then he gets hurt. Then they go through, you know, Nate Yarnell at Western Michigan. They come back to the Rhode Island game, don't really use that as an opportunity to try to get the passing game on track, which I think was a mistake, and it ends up, in my opinion, costing them in the Georgia Tech game, which they lose. They run for, you know, Izzy Abanikanda runs for 320 yards against Virginia Tech. They take the off week and don't really seem to improve the passing game at all, and come out and a couple turnovers are enough to sink them. They can't overcome that against Louisville. And then this game, you know, despite playing the worst offense or worst defense in the ACC, they're unable to build up a cushion that's strong enough to stay ahead of North Carolina, even though they led for 3 quarters. It comes back to a broken offense. This defense did what this defense will probably always do. We've always talked about that, about being in shootouts. That question of whether this offense can win a shootout or play in a shootout? I mean, the answer's been pretty clearly determined. It's no, they can't. And if they end up in a situation like that, they lose. And that's what happened tonight. They couldn't score enough to keep themselves ahead of North Carolina. When North Carolina made its run, Pitt hadn't built itself a big enough offensive cushion to absorb it. So they move into the final third of the season at 4-4, 1-4 in the conference. About as disappointing a fall as you could have drawn up in the aftermath of the ACC championship game. But despite what happens with the team, and despite what happens going forward, and despite wherever they end up or whatever this season looks like, Zach Joy as a super chatter says, so what's the Syracuse prediction? I mean, I still don't think Syracuse is all that good. I still, we thought this stretch would be a really tough one for Syracuse, and they got lucky against NC State with the backup quarterback. Notre Dame obviously got them, and I still think Pitt has every reason to expect to win that game against Syracuse next week. But they're going to have to score. I mean, they're going to have to figure something out on offense or be a little bit better on offense. No matter what happens with this team, though, we're going to keep pumping out the content at Panther-Lair.com. It's Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet: football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com. Of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. Panther-Lair.com. And then right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Click that subscribe button. Like this video. We appreciate that very much. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, then you'll never miss any of our live streams. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel and then turn on notifications, and we'll send you an alert right to your phone. And then you know when we go live, whether it's Wednesday night for the Panther-Lair show at 8:30. We do that every Wednesday night. Or when we go live after a game like this for the Panther-Lair Post-Game. So, Pitt loses by a lot. They're now 4-4. This is not good. So, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's the best you can do. It's the least you can do on this night. And we'll be back with another Morning Pitt on Monday morning. We have those every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Just 15, 20, 25 minutes talking about everything going on in Pitt sports, just to get you started on the day. We'll keep doing that, even if Pitt is 4-4. That's my promise to you. We will continue pumping out the content. So thanks for tuning in for the post-game show. We appreciate it. We'll see what they do. We'll see where they go from here. Hope you have a great rest of the weekend, though, and we will talk to you Monday morning for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.